Good evening. I am Roberto Santamaria, your host this evening for Nantucket Pulse programming made possible by Nantucket Cottage Hospital's Community Health Initiative. This is a special edition of Nantucket Pulse program that will air weekly covering the coronavirus impacts for the island and will provide urgent updates as they unfold. I am glad to be joined in the studio by Dawn Hill Holdgate, Chair of the Select Board. Christy Ferrantella joins us via Zoom. She is the interim president at the Nantucket Island Chamber of Commerce, as well as a member of the Select Board. We will discuss the letter addressed to seasonal residents signed this week by the Town of Nantucket, Chamber of Commerce, and the Nantucket Cottage Hospital. Then, we will talk about what advice and resources the Chamber can offer local businesses. Later in the show, I will interview Shawn Driscoll, Communications Director for the Steamship Authority, about the organization's financial trouble and positive responses in light of the pandemic. We are taping this episode at 10:30 a.m. on Friday, May 1st. Let's start with some community updates. The town election has been officially moved to June 16th. The town still plans to host the election at the high school, although the location may change from the lobby. Nancy Holmes, town clerk and top election official for the island, recommends casting your vote by mail. Given the pandemic, state and local laws permit everyone to request a mail-in ballot. It is likely the town meeting will occur after that election. This is legal, but unusual. For any measure to become law, it must pass both in the election and at town meeting, regardless of the order. Town offices will remain closed to the public until May 18th. Town employees currently are preparing them for the public with safety measures like hand sanitizer stations and plexiglass protectors. Already, the police department has a COVID-19 resource officer on duty waiting to answer all your COVID-19 questions at the COVID-19 hotline. To connect, please call 508-325-4111 or send an email to covid19@police.nantucket-ma.gov. The current number of positive COVID-19 cases on Nantucket is 12. That number has been steady for the past 4 days. Previously, the count had been steady at 10 cases for 22 days straight. The spread of the virus has been slowed to a crawl because of the hard work and sacrifice of our community. We must keep up the good work. To preserve this trend, the hospital has just trained 26 employees to assist with contract tracing of positive tests. By doing so, medical staff will know where to direct resources and advise quarantining before a single test has been issued. Around town, there are two schools of thought often expressed about the stay-at-home order during the summer. The first is to maintain the restrictions in order to decrease the chance of the virus spreading. The other seeks to decrease the burden on businesses by eliminating restrictions. Nantucket Cottage Hospital CEO and President Gary Shaw spoke to this contrast on this week's Select Board. He said, quote, "It is my belief that these two schools of thought are not necessarily mutually exclusive, and that we may be able to achieve both of these objectives." End quote. He encourages the Select Board to strike a balance within the framework of the Commonwealth's policies. In order to prioritize COVID-19 tests, the hospital uses a set of criteria to determine who qualifies for testing. On Wednesday, they announced an expansion of these criteria. If you exhibit at least one of the following symptoms, you may qualify for a test. They are subjective or documented fever, new sore throat, new cough, new runny nose or nasal congestion, new shortness of breath, new muscle aches, or anosmia, new loss of sense of smell. Please come to the drive-through testing area at the front of the entrance of the hospital any day between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., except between noon and 1 p.m. Massachusetts General Hospital has teamed up with King's College of London to create an app called the COVID Symptom Tracker. It relies on collecting lots of data to provide daily estimates of the prevalence of COVID-19 in any area. To help support this project, please visit the link on the bottom of the screen and in the description to download the app and to complete the survey. All information is useful, regardless if you have contracted COVID-19 or not. Then, take a look at how the app tracks the virus on Nantucket. Currently, the only people allowed to stay in commercial lodging across the Commonwealth are those traveling for a job that is considered an essential service, those in the process of self-quarantine, those who need emergency housing, like in the case of a fire, and a few other exceptions. The full list can be found at the link at the bottom of the screen and in the description. These restrictions will last until the stay-at-home advisory ends on May 18th. The town of Nantucket is working on a plan for a short-term traveler that does not fit the above descriptions for after the stay-at-home advisory. The island's Board of Health has the authority to restrict the availability of lodging beyond orders from the Commonwealth. We need more data in order to make any determination. The Nantucket Board of Health is resuming restaurant inspections on Monday, May 4th. Any restaurant can apply. Please call 508-228-7200 or email health@nantucket-ma.gov for more information. We don't yet know what dining in will look like once the stay-at-home advisory ends. Ideas under consideration are limiting occupancy to as low as 25% of capacity, requiring all staff to wear face masks, and spreading tables out onto closed streets outside of restaurants in order to maintain social distancing. The town of Nantucket and the Nantucket Chamber of Commerce released a letter to seasonal residents on April 27th. Until the Commonwealth's stay-at-home advisory expires, which is currently on May 18th, the letter asks those returning to the island to self-quarantine for a minimum of 14 days once reaching their destination. The letter says, quote, "It is best to go directly to your destination and not stop elsewhere on the island on the way," end quote. It recommends bringing groceries, medications, and other supplies to avoid having to leave your island residence until the 14 days has passed. It recommends wearing a face covering when one cannot maintain a social distancing gap of 6 feet, avoiding large gatherings, limiting trips to the grocery stores, and other measures. To find a copy of the letter, please visit the town's website, click on the link COVID-19 Alert, and then click the box entitled Resources for Seasonal Residents. The link is in the video's description. I will discuss this letter further with our guests later in the show. Nantucket's Emergency Order Number 5 is the first phase of the back-to-work plan for construction on the island after the March 20th moratorium. Under Order Number 5, there have been over 800 single worker requests, the vast majority of which are for single-day jobs. There have also been over 200 multiple worker requests for jobs like weatherproofing, work on employee housing, roofing, sewer repair, and sidewalk work. 26 of those requests are to get unfinished structures weathertight. According to Nantucket Building Commissioner Paul Murphy, construction crews have been very willing to work within the restrictions. In fact, as of Wednesday, Mr. Murphy says no violations have been issued. The building department has been offering support to crews by sharing example logs showing how to fill out the paperwork related to Order Number 5. There is currently much discussion about what the second phase will look like. The Select Board is considering possibilities like expanding the permissible number of workers on a site from 4 to 8 and allowing all projects with a permit or HTC approval. These suggested policies are not currently slated to take effect. Nantucket's Emergency Order Number 6 details the first phase back-to-work policies for landscaping. So far, the only issue that Nantucket Natural Resources Director Jeff Carlson has identified with landscaping crews is the prevalence of unmarked pickup trucks that seem to be equipped for landscaping work. He says that the marked trucks always track with approved job requests to the Department of Natural Resources. He cautions against crews trying to fly under the radar of Order Number 6 by using unmarked trucks. No back-to-work Phase 2 has been issued, but ideas are up for consideration, including increasing the size of crews from its current limit of 2. To find a copy of these 2 emergency orders, please visit the town's website, click on the link COVID-19 Alert, and then click the box entitled Emergency Orders. The link is in the video's description. You can find Spanish and Portuguese translations of these orders on that page as well. Governor Charlie Baker convened the Reopening Advisory Board that will write guidelines to reopen the Massachusetts economy in phases by balancing safety and business needs. Linda Markham, the president of Cape Air, and Wendy Hudson, co-founder of Cisco Breweries and owner of Nantucket Book Partners, are on the panel of 17. All passengers traveling on Highline cruises are required to wear face masks or coverings. All those traveling on a steamship authority are strongly encouraged to wear face masks. If one forgets a face mask, the Highline may deny him or her passage, and the steamship may seclude him or her to a designated area on the boat, or even bump him or her to a different boat that same day. Stop and Shop released a joint announcement with the United Food and Commercial Workers Union to call lawmakers to designate their workers as extended first responders or emergency personnel. This title would enable them to receive virus testing, emergency daycare, and other support services for them and their families. Additionally, Stop and Shop has announced that a 10% pay increase for union store associates will extend through May 30th. A public spokesperson for the grocery chain characterized current business with one word: busy. The Nantucket Chamber of Commerce reminds you to beware of scams when applying for financial support. Paycheck Protection Program loans can only come from authorized banks or credit cards. Applicants should send their debt forgiveness requests directly to those companies. You might hear from agents offering help to take applications or find a lender for a fee. Do not pay any fees. Agents are not supposed to charge fees for this service. Currently, economic injury disaster loans are not available due to the large amount of applicants. Please visit the Chamber of Commerce's website to see a long list of resources geared towards local business and their employees. You will find useful items like a small business survival guide, links to free legal help, a summary of the differences among the financial assistance programs, tips for negotiating rent during the pandemic, and links to financial assistance resources, including those for nonprofits. The link is at the bottom of your screen and in the description. Now, let's discuss the letter to seasonal residents that went out this week. I am joined by Select Board Chair Don Hill Holdgate and Board Member Christy Farentella. Welcome today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Great, Roberto. How are you doing?
It's been a little bit crazy. But we're good to, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So let's just jump right in, and why don't we talk about the happenings from these last few weeks. And we know there's been a lot of talk about a letter from the Chamber of Commerce and the Select Board. Can you run us through that a little bit?
Yes, there were a number of seasonal residents kind of asking what the appropriate path is in terms of returning to the island. And the hospital drafted a letter to try and address those issues and asked the town and the chamber to sign on to that letter. And it was met with a little bit of confusion. There were a couple of vague things in there that we've now clarified. And the biggest point, I think, is to look to what Massachusetts is doing in general. There is, if you are coming from out of state, there is a directive to please self-quarantine for 14 days. And as a community here that's a little bit more isolated by being 30 miles out to sea, we are asking that people take some sort of personal stock in whether they've been in a highly exposed area in terms of how they behave when they arrive on the island. Also, to consider bringing as many supplies with you as you can, but then also to look to the Chamber's website and the town's website for resources. There's many restaurants doing takeout and many food establishments doing curbside, and there's a lot, and there are a number of people who've taken to doing kind of concierge services of pre-stocking to really allow people to come and self-isolate as they need to, and then just looking to the other things that we're doing in terms of trying to wear masks when we're in the Stop and Shop and those kind of distancing behaviors that are necessary in these times.
There's definitely a lot of things that are necessary. Christy, what have you heard from any of these from this letter? What have you heard on your side from the Chamber's perspective?
Yeah, so seasonal homeowners were reaching out and very thrilled to have guidance A lot of them, like Don mentioned, are looking to come back for the season and really wanted to join into our success. We've had very low rates of COVID on the island, and they wanted to make sure that they were coming here safely and keeping our community safe. So we had a lot of good feedback in that arena. A lot of businesses were concerned, which is why we issued that clarification that this is really the governor's guidance and it's through May 18th. It wasn't an intention to have people start canceling July and August and thinking that they had a quarantine over the summer. So that clarification has really helped, and we've received a lot of good feedback from that. We're very optimistic that we can have somewhat of a summer and just keep putting out the guidance through the hospital, the chamber, and the town about how to come here safely and how to keep our community safe.
Excellent. And one last question before we move over to all the chamber updates. From the select board perspective, for both of you, anything new, anything you're looking into, anything you're looking forward to in the next few weeks in the agendas?
I think we're really just trying to continue to navigate our community response to this epidemic, and try to get things as close to back to normal as possible to function in some safe ways. We're looking at this is here to stay for a while, unfortunately, and we've been so successful. As Christy said, how do we continue to be really successful in practicing good behaviors, but still continue to function as a community?
Well, we're going to, Christy, if there's anything you would like to add on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think what I'm most looking forward to is seeing how innovative we've been. I think every meeting that we've had, we're thinking about how do we adapt both town operations, business operations, the whole island. And I just think it's been very encouraging to see how we can all work together and kind of reopen the economy slowly while maintaining that safety. But we're really thinking out of the box, and it's been inspiring to be part of this board during this time.
And we all got to look at creative ways.
We've started talking about some things like potential closing down of streets to set up tables to allow food service to continue in a safer way, and just really adapting as much as we can.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting to see all the new creativity that we're seeing on the island. I really want to see what the business sides do in this summer and moving into the summer as we move on to reopening our economy. Along those lines, Christy Ferrantella, president of the Chamber of Commerce, what updates do you have today for us?
Yeah, so everything, of course, is moving fast. There's new updates every day. This week, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, reopened. It had additional funding from Congress. They were first funding people who have already applied and then opening up for new applicants. So that is still a program, a federal program to help businesses rehire, and it is a forgivable loan if you use it appropriately for payroll and other expenses, mostly for payroll. Unfortunately, we did hear that the EIDL, the EIDL economic injury disaster loan through the SBA is no longer going to accept any new applications. However, if you've already applied, they are still processing those, and they are starting to process those advancements. The advancement was originally up to $10,000. We're fined now it's $1,000 per employee. We've heard of nonprofits and for-profits and other businesses all getting the advancement, so it is starting to see some money trickle down into businesses. So that's an update on the economic business relief. Other updates is our businesses are just, again, trying to think collaboratively and creatively. The Lodging Association had a meeting this week to really discuss how they can adapt and how their business can strive. We are hoping to hold some other roundtables in the next week to 10 days to hear about other industries. I think everybody is really starting to get creative.
Christy, one of the things that I keep hearing in regard to the PPP loan, unfortunately, from island businesses, is that it's not with the rules that have been put on it and them not being open, particularly like restaurants that aren't able to operate right now under the state directives. They can hire back their staff, but they have to use that payroll over the next 8 weeks from when they receive the money. And in addition, they can only use 25% on things like rent and utilities. And some of their rents are actually like the really big ticket items on this island. So they're just, have you been hearing that that they've been struggling with some of the parameters?
Definitely. Kind of right from the start, when we started to really hear the rollout of the PPP program, we realized how much it doesn't work. It didn't work for applying for seasonal businesses. And now we're hearing with, everything being shut down, it's causing even more frustration. We have been talking to people like Dylan Fernandez and Julian Sear, writing letters to Senator Markey. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is also advocating for changes. They're looking for extensions past June 30th and some other waivers so that it doesn't have to be used within the first 8 weeks. But those are things that we're hoping for clarifications, but it is frustrating at this time that it doesn't work for businesses. The Chamber has been looking for other relief funds. So we are working to see if we can get federal funds through the Community Development Block Grants, which comes from HUD, which is the Housing and Urban Development from the federal government. And those funds might be able to trickle down to small businesses here. So we're working on advocating for our local economy and truly trying to find any source of funding as possible.
Have you heard of any of the programs here on the island? How are they doing? Like Act Saves or the Community Foundation program?
Yeah, those are doing extremely well, and those are helping our individual workers and community members, keeping food on the table, being able to pay rent. Act Saves has been very successful in raising money for the food, fuel, and rental assistance. Unfortunately, none of these funds can go to businesses and help pay for their large rent or mortgage payments. So we're still looking for ways to help businesses. At the end of the day, these employees will have to go back to work, and we want their business to be there when they're ready.
And one last question, Christy. For those who want to renegotiate their rents, what does the Chamber of Commerce recommend for those types of businesses that are in these sorts of situations?
So we're recommending each person go individually into renegotiating their rent. We've heard from experts and lawyers that trying to go in as a group is not recommended. Each person has different terms. And so every time somebody reaches out, we're recommending that you contact your landlord and start those conversations. The Chamber's website does have resources. There was a webinar that has information that it's on our website, and we also have a letter that is a template for you to start that conversation with your landlord.
So Christy, thank you so much. We really appreciate all the insight from the Chamber of Commerce. If anyone wanted to reach you, what website should we use?
NantucketChamber.org.
So nantucketchamber.org. Christy, Don, we really appreciate you joining us today. If you have any questions, please reach out to any of us, and all these links should be in the description of the video for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now joining us via Zoom is Shawn Driscoll, the Communications Director for the Steamship Authority. Shawn, how are you doing today?
Good, Roberto. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So we have a few questions for you. If you don't mind, we'll just jump right in.
Sure thing.
So one of the first question that we have for you that's been here for the public is, if the steamship doesn't receive the financial assistance, will it run out of money? If so, what would happen?
Well, what we've projected is that the cash we had on hand when we sent this letter to Governor Baker was that we had enough operating cash to get us through May 31st. So at that point, assumed that we had pretty low traffic and we weren't really bringing in any money in terms of receipts. So, that projection stated that as of June 1st, we would run out of cash to pay our bills, to pay our payroll and for fuel and all that kind of stuff. After that, what would happen, if there was no change is a really interesting question. We've never been in this position before, but luckily what I can say is that since we sent that letter to Governor Baker, we've received word that more than $12 million in federal aid that we were in line for from a variety of sources has been expedited. The delivery of that's going to come a lot sooner than we expected. So we expect to have that cash on hand in the next couple of weeks, which is going to greatly improve our cash position and allow us to keep running. We're projecting right now through the end of July. So that May 31st date looks, for all intents and purposes, to be pushed out another couple of months. So we've had good news even since we sent that letter to Governor Baker, but we still are working on a long-term solution because our revenues have been so far down, traffic has been so far off that we're still going to run into sort of a systemic problem in a few months, but we've got a lot more time to find solutions for that.
Okay. And from what you've seen in comparison to a normal day in the late spring, what's been the maximum percentage of decreased traffic, and what is the maximum that you can see so that the steamship can withstand that over the next few months?
Well, the projections that we ran when we came up with that, when we determined that May 31st date, were based on what we were seeing through April, and that's been about 20% of the passengers we should be seeing, about 25% of the automobiles, and roughly 30 to 35% of the trucks. So we're running far, far below what we would be expecting at this time of year. And this is also the time of year we should start to see traffic start to ramp up as we head into May, and people are getting out of school and opening up their houses. So we've been far, far off of that. So, that projection, those figures are sort of what you use to project out the cash we had on hand a couple of weeks ago. And obviously if traffic were to go down more, that date would move forward. If we had more traffic, that date could move up. It's not an exact science to predicting obviously what the traffic is going to be, but we're running far, far below what we should be this time of year, which is, part of why we've cut back our schedule so much, but also part of a large reason why we're in sort of the cash position that we're in.
So what is the plan if if the financial assistance doesn't come?
Well, as I said, we did get that $12 million expedited, the delivery of that from the federal government. So that's going to help us out greatly. We're also pursuing a line of credit of $10 million from some local institutions that would give us a little bit more breathing room, although that's something we would want to access only in an emergency situation. But luckily I can share we've had a lot of really productive conversations with people at the state government level and our federal congressional delegation about sort of the unique situation that we're in that we're 100% funded by our fare box. We're not funded by the state at all, and we have this limitation on how much cash we can have on hand by law. So we don't have a rainy day fund that we can really draw on. So we're in a unique situation. It's going to take a unique solution to find that way out of that. But we have every confidence, that we're going to be able to do that. Everyone at the state and the federal levels of government has been really receptive to us, and we've had a lot of really productive conversations about it. And they're, understanding sort of the path that we need to be on to find some kind of solution for some additional aid to us. So, we have every confidence that it's going to take a unique solution, but we have every confidence we're going to find one.
Excellent. And do you have a firm date for the Fast Ferry INO?
We don't right now. We're having those discussions internally. Obviously Memorial Day is coming up. So there's a question about what that's going to look like. Right now our schedules are out through May 14th, and the IANO is not on them. So it's at least not coming back in the next couple of weeks. And in terms of beyond that, that's something that we're trying to figure out what level of service will be appropriate as we get closer into what would have been the summertime. Okay.
And then, well, moving back to some of the COVID-related questions, we see some announcements being made about face masks. Would you mind touching upon those?
Sure. So, all along our position has been that we, as a public entity, we can't deny people access to the boats because of whether or not they're wearing a face mask. There hasn't been a declaration from Governor Baker that face masks are mandatory in public, nor from the federal government. So I know a lot of people have been asking us to deny people entrance to the boats based on that, and we feel, and we continue to feel, that's not something we're able to do. But what we have implemented just this week is that we are requiring face masks if you're going to be in an interior passenger compartment. So if you're going to be on the freight deck outside of a vehicle or in an interior part of the boat, you have to have a face mask on. If you don't have a face mask, we're not going to deny you boarding per se, but you will be directed to sit outside or in another area that the master of the vessel might designate if it's a weather situation or there's some other peculiarity. But trying to keep those people who don't have face masks in, a certain section to protect everyone else on the boat, including our crews, from anyone, who's not taking that precaution. And hopefully this is going to wake everybody up to the reality that we're, at a point right now where everyone needs to be wearing those. And that's, a lot of towns have been taking those steps.
Okay. And with that, I assume that there's been more cleanliness and cleaning protocols, sanitizing protocols. Can you run us through any of that?
Absolutely. Since this got started in March, which in COVID time is 2 years ago, but we have instituted more stringent cleaning protocols now since beginning of March, mid-March. So our vessel crews were already cleaning the boats in between trips. Now they're doing a lot more during the trips. They're instructed specifically to clean those heavy touch points, the railings, the tabletops, doorknobs, all that kind of stuff. We've got Purell dispensers on the boats and Purell wipes and all kinds of sanitizing needs for our customers. And obviously, we have the advantage that the boats all have restrooms with soap in them. So we, encourage people to use those too. The buses are cleaned once every 4 hours. The terminals are being cleaned once every 3 hours or so. So we have upped, what was already a pretty good cleaning regimen in the light of all this to make sure that we're keeping everybody as safe as possible.
And Shawn, what is the opinion that Governor Baker's response that the steamship's financial health is actually not a state issue?
Well, Roberto, what I can say is that we've had active conversations with people at the state and the federal levels. We've talked to people in the Office of Administration and Finance and the State Department of Transportation about our situation before and since Governor Baker's remarks. So we're actively engaged with them. They're actively engaged with us, and we feel really good about the conversations and sort of the understanding that we've developed, and that they're working hard on our behalf to find a solution.
One last question. We're just wondering how the mood is with the staff out there. I hope everyone's doing well.
Sure, and I don't necessarily want to speak for everybody, but I know that the people I have talked to, everyone's doing their job, and they're doing it in a very professional way, and they understand the importance of the service that we're providing and being the lifeline to Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. Obviously we need to keep our ship afloat, figuratively and literally, to be able to get the goods and services and people to the islands as they need to go. So everyone takes that really seriously. I know there's a lot of concern out there, as there is for everybody who's on the front lines of keeping themselves healthy. We've been working very hard to source masks for everyone, and all of our employees should have multiple of them, if not now, then in the very near future. And we are, we're very grateful to them. I know they're the ones making contact with people and being out there and putting themselves at greater risk. And we certainly appreciate that, and we're thankful to all of them for their hard work and their professionalism.
We certainly are thankful for the steamship and all of your hard work and this whole organization, and how professional everyone has really been. Shawn Driscoll, we really appreciate you spending your time here today, taking time out of your day. We know you're really busy, and we really thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Roberto. Stay safe.
We will continue to provide you with updates on the coronavirus and impacts for Nantucket. Every week, Nantucket Pulse airs a new wellness episode hosted by Natalie Simonero with our local health professionals on Channel 18 and nctv18.org. Please share this with friends and family. It's designed to connect our viewers with local health professionals that can help us take care of ourselves and others around us. It's important that communications remain in place as events continue to unfold and we all remain connected. It's crucial to get the facts from your local news sources such as the Inquirer and Mirror, 97.7 AC-FM radio, and NCTV Channel 18. Please stay tuned to see a special message to our essential workers from the community. I am Roberto Santamaria, and thank you.
We want to thank all the essential workers and medical professionals
and first responders and town employees and stop and shop workers and
the teachers who are working remotely, people who are all doing what they can to save us while we do what we can by staying inside.
We are so very appreciative and we'd like to clap for you. Thank you for everything you're doing for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.